Hey guys, I'm going to do a sew along with you, and this one features a pair of flannel pants for lounging around in, and simple double-rowed 1-inch hem at the bottom, and we have a elastic waistband. I've used 1 inch. I recommend knit for your waistband. The reason is it recovers very well. It doesn't get skinnier as it stretches out. That prevents the band from rolling, and it works real well because it's soft. It gives fairly easily, so I like it. It works real well for this kind of pants. So it's got an attached waistband. We've got a pull string made out of self fabric, so I'll show you how to do that, and sewing the buttonholes on the front to put the strap through, and the elastic, full elastic waistband, and then we have pockets. And what's important is the reason I made these, my old pants I had the original iPhone. It was the last one I had was a 4S, and I upgraded to the new 6 Plus, and I carry my phone with me everywhere, so it's why I have pockets in these. And so I had to make deeper pockets, so these feature very deep pockets. Now it's a self-drafted pattern, so it shows you how deep they are. Anyway, I drafted the pattern myself, but I'll show you how to, if you want to add pockets to a commercial pattern that doesn't have them. If you follow along with me, you can kind of see how to do it, and if you have any questions or anything, let me know. I'll be happy to answer how to do any of these techniques for you. If it's something separate from what you see in the video, or something beyond what you see in the video, I'll be happy to help you out. But anyway, this is what we're going to make, so let's get started on it, and hope you enjoy it. Okay, we've got our pattern here, and I've added a pocket to it. So this is a CAD drafted pattern that I made, and let me kind of show you the process of getting the pocket lined up and everything. So one of the first things you want to do is tape your pocket down to where the seam is going to line up, and then I've taped it on here to line it up. And what I've done is I've drawn a line. This is the seam line across the front side, and I've drawn a line here to keep it just at the top of where we sew the waistband on. That'll keep it from getting all bunched up. We just want it to catch there to keep it from flopping around too much. So I've drawn a line just beyond the stitch line, just above it, to give me about probably, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or so to kind of catch it when I put the waistband on. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. So scissors here and cut this, and then I'll show you how to line the pocket up. Okay, so now the pocket will align with my waistband. So we'll go ahead and pull it off. Okay, so let me show you a little bit about the pocket design. One of the things I ran into with all my old pants is I put pockets in them because I carry my cell phone around with me, and when I went from the iPhone 5 to 6, they're obviously bigger. So one of the things you do is this lines up with the waistband now on the front side where the seam allowance is going to be, and these 2 notches right here are for my hands. So I just kind of lay my hands down, give myself enough room. You have to remember too, you may need a little bit more because you're going to turn it going into the pocket. So just kind of measure that and give yourself about a 1/2 inch on each side, and then I notch it. So that's where I'm going to sew down to here, and from there down to leave my opening. And then what I do is I draw a line over from where my notch is, and I put my phone there, and you can see the outline of the phone. And the idea is to make it big enough to where when I sit down, the phone doesn't fall out of my pants. And that's one of the problems I've had before. This new one was sitting about right there. So when you sit down, it kind of turns and it would end up falling out of my pants periodically. So anyway, that's the idea. I've got plenty of flannel pants, but I need bigger pockets now. So that's why I'm going to make me a couple of new pairs. And when you do your pocket, it's basically kind of like a teardrop design. This is fairly easy with a French curve or some sort of a form curve when you come down and do your circle. So if you don't have these tools, you can use a plate or something. Just get yourself a good round circle here, and then it's notched out here where my seam allowance is, right there. So that keeps this free from the pants. And I use 1/2 inch seam allowances. Okay, so one of the things I do to get my notches on my pattern, and you'll see I've got notches here and I've got notches here, is I lay this down, line it up with the seam to where it will sew into the seam on the back, and then I put a piece of tape on it to hold it down like so, and then I bring my pattern and line it up where it's going to be sewn in, and then I cut my notches through all three at that point to give myself my opening. That way everything lines up perfectly. I've got my notches that I'll cut out when I cut my pattern out, and I can clip it. I just use basically little bitty scissor clips when I do this. Now, one of the things you may run into, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to serge my edges, and after that I'll put my marks on there. I'm just going to use a wash away marker to mark them on each side just beyond the serge stitch. That way I can see what's going on, and that will give us our alignment marks for getting our pockets sewed on perfectly. So I just want to go through that with you real quickly. If you've got pants that don't have pockets, and a lot of the patterns out there don't have pockets, it's easy to add them, and I'll just show you the technique for sewing them on, and then you can add the all-important cell phone carrying pocket to your flannel pants. Okay, that's it. So next we'll get on with, I'll cut the fabric out using the pattern, and then what I'm going to do is serge all my edges before I sew, and I'll show you the result of the serging. I'm not going to actually bore you with the serging part, but if you don't have a serger, use either a zigzag or the overcast stitch on your sewing machine, but finish your edges. And you can do a French seam if you want to, but usually flannel is a little bit too thick. French seams are good for sewing thinner fabric in general. So I've seen people try to use French seams on flannel. I don't prefer it, honestly, because the seam gets so thick. But if yours is thin enough, do a test French seam and kind of see how thick it is, and it may work for you on some of the thinner flannel. But mine's kind of a light medium weight. I'm just going to serge the edges, and then we'll get on with sewing it together. So let me get that taken care of first, and then I'll meet you back, and we'll get over on the sewing machine. I'll show you how to sew the pockets on. Okay, the first thing we want to do, we've got all of our edges serged at this point all the way around, and again, you can use either a zigzag on your regular machine, or you can use the overcast stitch, or even pinking shears if you don't have either of those. So alright, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stay stitch the waistband area. So I do this while all the pieces are separate. It makes it just a little bit quicker and easier. So basically I just use the width of the presser foot for my stay stitch seam allowance, and so just trim my threads here. There we go. Okay, so just go around the edge of each one of them. The width of your presser foot will work. Back tack. And I'm doing a stitch length of a little bit over 2.5. I kind of shortened it up a little bit for this to keep everything nice and stable. Okay, there's one. There's the second one. Now I'll do the two back panels and we will be done with that. And after that we're going to put the pockets on. So again, stay stitch the waistband, all 4 pieces, and then we'll put the pockets on next. Okay, first thing we're going to do is sew our pockets on, and you're going to use the right side of each on the front and the back, and it's going to be on the side seam. And sometimes on the flannel it's hard to tell which side's the right side and the wrong side, so I just use a small safety pin to mark it. When I cut my fabric out, I attach it on there, so it makes it a little bit easier to figure out quickly which side's the right side and the wrong side of your fabric. Okay, take our pocket. Line it up with the top of the waistband. Just like that. Stuff kind of stretches and sticks together, so let me anchor it back down here and pull everything down. So we want it nice and flat. Okay, that looks good. Alright, so we're going to, my seam allowance is a 1/2 inch on my pattern. You're going to have to use your seam allowance. It may be 5/8 on some of the commercial patterns that you buy. So I'm going to line up here at the 1/2 inch mark, and I've got my little cutout right there, and I'm just going to sew my pocket on. Back tack at the beginning and the end. Okay, there's one. Okay, now we'll do, this is the first front. We're going to repeat this process for each piece. So get a pocket, take our fabric, find our right side by looking at which side has our safety pin on it. So this side has the safety pin on it. So I know that's the correct side, and that's the crotch seam side, so I need to turn it around and put my pocket face down so this is right sides together. Okay, again 1/2 inch seam allowance is what I am using. Come on, get in there. There we go. curves just a little bit on this seam, so I'm trying to follow it to keep the seam true. It should line up right where the cutout is down there, which it does. Back tack at the beginning and the end to lock your stitch. Okay, there's 2 of them, and what we're going to do after we sew all 4 of them on, I'm going to go ahead and show you this, is we're going to take the pocket, there's the seam we just sewed, so the seam is heading this way. I'll flatten it out again. So we sewed it like this. We're going to take this, we're going to fold it out, keeping the seam flat as we fold it. So keep your seam nice and flat, and we're going to do a top stitch right here, the width of the presser foot. My presser foot is 1/4 of an inch. So I don't know how wide yours is, but basically it's 1/4 of an inch. We've got a 1/2 inch seam, so it can go a little bit beyond it, so I can come out to about right there, but this is going to be the inside of the pocket. This is going to keep it from peeking out once we've sewed this in. So alright, here we go. Okay, all you want to do is just keep your pocket splayed open to keep that seam nice and flat. Making sure everything's still flat. Just pull it with your hands. Don't pull it real tight, but just flatten it out nicely. That's all you have to do. Back tack at the bottom to lock the stitch. And that's the process of attaching the pockets to the front and back. So you'll sew them on right sides together, and then once you've got them all sewed on, you will do what I just did, turn your seam this way, and when your pocket goes on the inside, it's going to turn over like this, and then that little stay stitch there will keep the inner pocket from peeking out. So that's the purpose of it. So this will be the inside, and you can see it kind of holds it over nicely, and so we'll end up sewing the inside together once we get our pants put together. So anyway, sew right side together, all the pockets on, and then splay them out and do the stitch here on the inside to hold the pocket flap down, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now that we've got our pockets all sewed on, next thing we're going to do is press them out. So what I like to do is pull the pocket out this way, and this is the wrong side, the inside of the pants. So pull it out and just get this seam nice and flat right there. And I have a clapper. If you don't have one of these, I'd suggest one. It helps remove the moisture after you've steam pressed something. Kind of sets the seam nicely. And then we're going to turn it over. Everything should pretty much be flat at this point. We're going to flatten it out. Kind of roll this over to make sure it's nice and flat. And it'll stay flat because of your stitch that's been put in there to keep everything locked in. So, okay, do that on all 4 sides. And once we do that, I've already pressed the others. We will take and lay this down. That's the back. And we're going to take the front. We find a front piece. Let's see, that's 2 backs. I need a front. There we go, that's the correct front piece. I'm sorry, that's the back piece. I have the front piece down, so I'm going to flip these over. That way I can have the larger piece on the back. Okay, so lay your back piece down on your board, and we're going to press it to get it good and flat again. And you'll notice that I didn't get up and press this beforehand. If you need to, you can press this before you come back and stitch this on the inside of the pocket down if it makes you feel better, but I don't do that. I try to do all my sewing and then come do my pressing. It saves time. And so I stay stitched this before I did that, so I can actually press the stay stitching now along with the pocket, and it saves me a little bit of time. So that's a suggestion for you to try. And sewing without pressing comes down to handling techniques. So if you learn how to handle the fabric properly, you can sew without having to go press every time. Pressing is important, but there's a time to do it. Okay, I'm going to take and line everything up. So I'm going to line it up at the top, like so. And then I'm going to come line my side seams up. I'm going to kind of open my pocket here to make sure that that's all together. Kind of split it open and look at it. This stuff sticks together like crazy. Let me try this again. If you don't get it close, start trying to drag it around, it drags both pieces together. Okay. Okay, those seams line up there. Go ahead and lay everything back out now. And then my top seams should line up. I need to match the fold there on the top. And then my pocket should line up. So I'm going to come out here and look at these and make sure these are aligning. I need to pull it over a little bit. And that should line my pockets up better. Okay, there we go. Looks like everything's lined up nicely now. So I'm just going to take a minute and kind of flatten everything out over here because we're going to press this before we take it over to the sewing machine. I find that helps keep everything together before I start tacking it down. So what I will do first is I will mark my openings using my notches here. So I'm not going to do that on camera, but take your pocket and set it down. Mark, these are going to be your sewing lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew down to this notch, and then we're going to kind of go back and forth to do a bar tack, and then we're going to come all the way around the pocket like this. We're going to come up to this bar tack here, and then we will continue all the way down with our 1/2 inch seam allowance. Again, I design my own patterns. I use 1/2 inch. Your commercial pattern would probably be 5/8. So do whatever your pattern suggests. But anyway, so we need to mark this so we know where our opening is and we'll be consistent on each side. So I'll mark this before I take it over to the sewing machine, and I'll just use chalk so it'll show up. And I'll do that on both of them. I'll repeat this process on both of them. Then I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. Okay, now we're back at the sewing machine. So we've pressed everything. I'm going to make sure, just by checking it here, that everything has stayed together, nothing has moved. I see my seams moved just a little bit. It's probably from me doing the chalk mark, so I'll realign that up and make sure everything down here is still lined up. Okay, I've got my markings here and here for my opening. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to follow my original seam on my pocket. That was my 1/2 inch seam allowance, so it acts as a marker for when we're sewing our seam. because we can't see what's going on underneath the fabric here because it's covering our seam lines up. So I'll just use that as my guide. Put my foot right down on it. And we're going to sew to this line, and then we're going to come across and sew around the pocket. So here we go. Okay, I'm just following my 1/2 inch line. And I'm going to go to the line, the white line, which is the opening of my pocket. Plant my needle down, turn my fabric around, try to keep everything together. Make sure these seams down here are staying together, pockets all lined up. Okay, now we're going to do a bar tack across here to reinforce the pocket opening. We'll do it both at the top and the bottom. So we're going to go forward, back, and then forward again, and that should do it. So you just want to be careful when you go back, you don't go beyond your 1/2 inch line there. So I'm just going to slowly come forward a few stitches. Then I'm going to go back and forward. And that should do the bar tack to take care of it. Okay, now I'm just going to kind of come up and go all the way around the pocket and work my way back up to this side. So here we go. And I'm going to do about a 1/4 inch seam around it roughly. I need to leave enough room so I can come back and serge it. Looks like I need to go another stitch there, so I'll do it at an angle. Go ahead and do 2 of them here. To about right there. And now I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That'll give me enough room to come back and serge my edges here. I'm going to go ahead and get my legs folded up so they're not pulling off the edge. That's one thing great about these industrial machines. You can get a fairly flat surface to work on. I know it's tougher on the home machines because they're up in the air. That's one of the reasons why I like industrial machines, among many of the others. So when you come around, honor your curve. Just slow down if you need to. You can stop and bury your needle and move the fabric if you need to, but as long as you're using the technique of just kind of following the curve, you should be okay. You can slow down, go slow if you need to. And you see how I've got all the fabric bunched up here? So it's not falling off the machine. And we're just following it around. Okay. Now we're just going to go up to our mark. And we're on our chalk mark. So we're going to turn back this way. Get everything nice and flat. We're going to do our bar tack again. And again, our other seam shows us where our 1/2 inch seam allowance is there from where we sewed our pocket on. So that's our mark. So I'm going to come over, stop right on it. And then I'm going to go back and forward again. Stop right on it. That gives me a little enforcement of a bar tack. And now we're going to sew our 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down. So I'm going to keep this up here so it doesn't fall off the end. Just go ahead and line up my edges here. And I'm going to follow my previous thread there to give me my 1/2 inch seam allowance, since I can't see anything yet. And I'm peeking under and finding my 1/2 inch seam allowance. And now we're on it. So now that I've got that anchored down, I can unfold everything, get it all lined up. I don't sew with pins when it comes to this kind of stuff. I only use a pin when I absolutely have to. I've got 10 pins called your fingers that will keep everything lined up. So I'm coming down to the very end, lining up the end here is what I'm doing, and then I'm going to pull on it to give me an alignment mark where I can clamp down on the fabric somewhere up here to keep it lined up. So I'll do it right there, and then I put my hand underneath on the bottom layer to kind of keep everything perfectly lined up on the seam. So here we go. Stop your needle down, come back and line up the end again down here, and then pull it tight. Give yourself another alignment mark. And that looks good right there. Again, I'm using my hand on the bottom of the fabric to keep everything lined up nicely. And just go on the 1/2 inch mark and sew away. And I just sew up until I get to my mark on my hand here, because I know everything's lined up at that point. Okay, now I'll repeat the process again, go to the end, pull everything nice and tight, myself another alignment mark, line the fabric edge up, and sew away. Down to the end now, got my alignment mark, my ends are together, so everything will line up at the hem allowance fine. So here we go. And lock it down. Okay, now we'll turn it over and sew up the other side, and then we're going to repeat the same process on the other side of the pants, and we'll have both legs sewed together. So I'm going to sew from the top to the bottom, just like I did over here. That way I don't have a twisted seam. Line up my top. One thing about flannel, stuff sticks together like crazy. Come on, come apart. Okay. The only thing I'm trying to do is get my seams lined up at my 1/2 inch mark here at the top, and then once I get it started, I anchor it down and get going. But it's kind of mimicking what you do when you pin before you sew. Get it at the 1/2 inch mark, which is right there. Everything's lined up at the top. Put my foot down, see if I can get some of this going in the right direction. There we go. Hold my thread tails, a couple stitches forward and backwards to lock it in, and we're off. Okay, before I get too far, I'm going to get my needle down, and I'm going to line everything up at the bottom, just like I did before, and then come up here with it lined up, anchor it down, and line my seams up, and I'm off. Needle down again, line at the end, anchor point. So I'm pulling the fabric tight from the end is what I'm doing. Anchor it at the end again. Everything's lined up nicely, it looks like, and here we go. And lock it down. Okay, we're going to repeat this exact same process on the other side of the pants, and then we'll go. Okay, now that we've got everything sewed together, we just need to press as sewn, as they say. So get everything flattened out. You have to be careful of this fleece because it stretches, and make sure it's good and flat before you press it, because it'll roll up on you when you start pressing it. So just take the time. I mean, you can see right there, just me pulling over it, it kind of wrinkled up a little bit. So what I do is I just kind of lightly go over it with my iron instead of really pressing down hard on it. Come down through here with my clapper, remove the moisture. Okay, that one's set. Now we'll turn it over on this side. Always put the side that's trying to roll up and like this on the top, that way I can see what's going on, kind of work it out, flatten it out. If you put it on the bottom, you may end up pressing it. Do this side seam first, and then I will do the pocket area. Okay, that one's pressed. Let's bring it down here and get the pocket pressed. You may want to stretch it out a little bit before you press it. It can get a little bit wrinkled. Okay, there's our pocket. Get all these seams pressed up. One of the things you can do if you've got some really thin fleece is put stabilizer on the opening of the pockets here. So you'd put it just on the back side, on the, let's see, how do we do it? Yeah, on the back side of the pocket and on the inside seam here. So it'd be inside the stitch line, and it would stabilize that pocket area. What I find on most of the fleece though, once you get those 3 layers in there, it's generally stable enough, but if you really feel like it and you want to stabilize it, then put just a little strip, a 1/4 inch stabilizer on the pocket and on the side seam, and then sew it together, and it'll stabilize your pocket. But again, on most fleece, it's thick enough where I don't do it, and I haven't ever had any problems. Okay, next thing we're going to do is press the seams flat, so let me get set up for that and I'll show you how I do that. 2, 1. Okay, so we're going to use our sleeve board to press our seams flat. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend them. They work well for doing this kind of stuff. So what we'll do is take our pants, they're still wrong side out, and we're going to press our seams open. And I'll show you the technique I use for that. Go ahead and open the seam up with my fingers here, Come on. Serged edges want to stick together. Okay, so I'm just going to hover over the seam with a lot of steam. I'm not pressing it. I'm just encouraging it to lay open is all I'm doing. And after I do that, we'll turn it over on the right side and then press it. So kind of let that set for a second, cool down. Then I'll turn it around the other way. This fleece is so hard to slide, grabs the hold of everything. Okay, I'm just going up to where I see I stopped on the other one basically. And we're just going to encourage this seam to go ahead and open itself up. And then we take our iron, again we're not pressing on it, we're just kind of hovering over it slightly with steam. Again, just trying to encourage it to lay open. Now we'll just kind of finger press it. Let that cool. I'm going to go a little bit quicker than I normally would here, just to show you the technique. So we'll turn it over now, and we're going to press it from the right side. This will give us a nice press seam. So I want to make sure I can feel that seam is laying nice and flat in there. Kind of pull everything open so the seam's nice and open. And then we're going to press on this side with a lot of steam. Put some pressure on it. Kind of see one of my seams is not laying flat there, so I'm going to reach up in here with my arm, make sure that it's flat, flatten it back out with my hands, and there it laid down. So you can feel it if it's going the wrong way. And then we're going to press that. Now I'm going to turn it around. Okay, I'm going to press it with my hand. And that's the technique. So I usually use my clapper at this point to come down here and really set the seam. And you'll end up with a very professional press seam when it's all said and done. So anyway, that's the technique that I use. I'm going to finish up pressing the rest of them, and then next we're going to serge the edge of the pockets. So I'll show you how to do that, and I'll see you at the serger in a minute. Okay, one of the things I wanted to tell you that I forgot about, let me get my other scissors. There we go. When you're pressing the pocket side of the seam open, you're going to want to clip up to the seam line right here where the pocket is sewn together. That way you can press the seam open, and you can do it up here if you wish. I normally don't mess with that, but if you want to, you can trim it up here also so you can press that seam open, but that one's pretty well locked down. So what I'll do, I'll find where this is sewed up to, and it's about right there, and I will go to the pocket. You want to make sure your pocket is turned toward the front, and this is the front side of the pattern, so the pocket needs to go toward the front before you do this, and you're trimming the back seam so it will stay open. So come back here now and kind of press that down a little bit, and I showed you earlier how I press it lightly on this side and then flip it over. But anyway, I wanted to show you that just so you know when it comes time to do that, you can press that seam open, it'll lay nice and flat, and then it's optional to trim that if you want to, but that one's fairly flat to begin with. So okay, that's it. I'll move on now to doing the pockets next. So I just wanted to show you that because I forgot on the last step. Okay, now we need to finish off the edge of our pocket, so I'm going to do a 3-thread overlock on mine. Slightly trim the edges to clean things up. Stitch looks good. Go right up to the edge as far as you can go. Back off on the blade at this point. That's about as far as I'm going to be able to get. So what I'll do now is I'll just go over to the sewing machine, and I'll probably just do a little zigzag on my home machine, just to kind of make sure that stays sealed up there. So that's optional, but I like to do that just to make sure that when it washes over and over again it's not fraying. But anyway, you can see now our pocket's nice and clean. So do that on both pockets, and then we will go forward with sewing the crotch seam up next. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure our pocket is laying on the front seam, and we're going to tack it down. That way when we put our waistband on, it'll be in the position it needs to be in, and we don't have to worry about it. So turn your pants right side out, and you'll be able to tell which side's the back seam because it will be the taller one. Hopefully it will be. If yours is the same all the way around, you just need to mark what the front is, but on mine the front is sloping downward, so I can see that that is my front. It's the shorter one. So okay, so now that I figure out which side's the front, I'm going to lay it down on the machine. Get everything flat again. And I'm just going to tack the pocket to the front because that's the way it needs to go, and it's where it needs to stay. When we put our waistband on, we don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to do the width of my presser foot here and just tack it down. Turn my machine on. Go ahead and back stitch. You want these stitches to stay in place. And tack it down at the end also. Okay, now that we've got that done, I'll do it on the other one, and then we will go forward with putting or sewing our crotch seam together finally. So do that next. Okay, now we're going to put together the pants to sew the crotch seam together. You're going to turn one right side out and the other leg wrong side out. And the theory here is we're going to take the right side out one and put it in the wrong side out, and that'll give us right sides together. So easiest way to do this is find your back seam at the bottom of your crotch, and that's where we're going to go in, and we're going to find the back seam with the crotch on the ones that are right side out, and we're going to grab right down here at the bottom, grab that one, and we're going to open up the one that is wrong side out, and we're going to put the right side one into the wrong side one. So the best way I found to do this is just follow that seam with the other seam in your hand, and then when you come down at the end, try to find the other side and pull it through. And all we need to do now is match up the leg seam there, find the other leg seam, match it up, and then we're just going to pull the pants up and shake it all together like that. And what you should end up with after that is they should be pretty much perfectly lined up. So as you can see, they came together fairly well. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure this crotch seam stays lined up perfectly. Now I can usually do this just by sewing it, but we're going to pin it, and I'll show you how to pin it. Just going to take a little pin, and we're going to go through one seam. So we'll go through this one over here first. I'm going to pull the other one away. So I'm going to go right at the top, right through there, and I'm going to look at the other side and make sure that I've come through the seam on the other side. I think it'd be easy, but you've got to verify that you're coming through the other side. So if I look at it, I've missed. So I'm going to do it again, change my angle a little bit. Try not to stab myself. And I'm a little bit on the other side that time. So I keep working it over until I get in between those two seams. Like I said, it sounds easier than what it is to stay perfectly in between the two seams. Kind of missed them both that time. And I'm off again. Dang, that seam is tough. There we go. Okay, it went through it that time. So now that I've got that one through that seam, I need to do the same thing on the one on the other side while keeping them lined up on the edge. Sorry it took so long. Normally it doesn't take me anywhere near that long. You know how that is. You start doing something on camera. Okay, I can see kind of where I went in there, so I'm going to go in the same place on the other side. And that one went perfectly right through it. So, okay, now we got to do it in the opposite direction. So, best thing to do is look and see if you can get these seams lined up before you even attempt it. And that right there should be pretty close. So now I'm going through on this side, and the idea is to come out through the seam on the other side. There we go. Okay. So now that I've done that, all I'm going to do is do a quick basting stitch at the same seam allowance that I'm going to use when I sew the pants. So one of the things I do is, usually because of the angle I've gone in, this one is pushed down further than the other one is, so you got to kind of pull it up to get everything back even again. And there it is, it's even. Now this is the only time you'll ever see me sew over a pin, so what I would encourage you to do is increase your stitch length to about 3.0. And that's what I'm going to do. And then we're just going to hand walk it to get the stitch in right here to get this lined up. So I'm going to start right about where the seam is folded over, and I'm going to sew at my 1/2 inch mark over to the other side, and I'm going to make sure that that seam stays lined up. So go ahead and back tack, and I'm going to sew up to it, and then when I get to it I'm going to hand walk it. Okay, I'm close, so I just want to make sure that the needle is not going to hit the pin. So I'm coming right down next to it there. The next one will go right over it. And I'm looking at my seam allowance here. Everything still looks good. So that one goes over it. I'm going to pivot just a little bit to stay within my seam allowance. About right there. And now I'm going to go to the end and back tack. There we go. Okay, the ideal is that that should be perfectly lined up now. So we're going to take a look to make sure it is. So we'll remove our pin and have a look at our seam, and it's perfectly lined up, which is what we want. You'll do the same thing with the crotch seam. So basically you're just sewing from the fold of the crotch seam to the other fold side, and now when we sew our crotch seam together, everything should stay together. So it'll match perfectly, in other words. Okay, we're going to sew it together now. So we've got right sides together. I want to make sure these match up perfectly. Again, my seam allowance is 1/2 inch. I shorten my stitch just a little bit from my basting stitch. Okay, now that it's locked down, go all the way around the crotch seam. Okay, now that this is tacked down, it actually helps you keep everything lined up. So, go down here like this, grab the bottom, so I can keep everything lined up here, and off we go. And I pulled the bottom too much. Get everything lined back up here. I think I'm going to do it in small sections. Stuff's grabbing a hold of each other once it gets in there and it won't line up. There we go. Okay, here we go. And you just work your way around it. We're entering the curve part, so honor the curve. Just slowly work your way around it. The serged edges want to stick together. And sometimes what I do when it's being fussy like that, I'll just take a pair of scissors and hold it together. Force it to stay where I want it to. Okay, here we go. And we're getting closer to the bottom crotch seam, crossing area. So the closer we get, the easier it is because it's already basted together down there. So just keep realigning it. And we're going to sew over our basting stitches that we sewed to lock everything down. Everything laid out. And I want to go right over those basting stitches. There we go. Now we'll work our way up the other side and our crotch seam will be done. So let me make sure everything stays together nicely here. Alright, get my ends together, kind of flatten everything out. And here we go. What I'm doing, I'm putting my hands underneath sometimes that bottom seam will try to creep out, and I just use that to guide it where it stays perfectly aligned. Right tack at the top, and we are done with the crotch seam. Okay, next thing we need to do is press the crotch seam open all the way around. I tell you what I'm going to do, I'm going to sew over the stitches a second time from about here to the same spot up on the other side. The reason I do that is sometimes this flannel, actually I'm going to do the whole thing again. It's a lot easier to do the second time as it's already locked down, but the flannel sometimes will the stitches get weak because of the material, and I've had it kind of, you know, shred a hole in it before. So I'm going to go slower this time to stay on my same stitches. Take my glasses off here so I can see better closer. And you want to stay right on those stitches. And you'll get off just a little bit at times, but just stay as close as you can to those original ones. Sometimes I get about a needle width apart, which is fine. The key though is to have 2 rows in here. It'll make all the difference in the world in a couple of years after these have been washed a few times. That crotch seam's not going anywhere. It's got 3 rows of stitches in it now. It's got our basting stitch plus these 2. just about at the end. It's a lot easier once it gets flat. Alright, there we go. That's the second row. So it's optional, but I've just, through sewing so many of these and wearing them over the years, I've learned that that's the best way to do it. That way it keeps everything locked in, and after you've washed them 50 times or whatever and worn them a lot, it'll help them stay together. Okay, so we're going to press that seam open next, so I'll meet you over at the iron. Okay, we're pressing the seam flat as sewn. And I'm using a ham for this. Since it's kind of curved. Fairly quick and easy. So the next thing we're going to do is turn this thing right side out, then wrong side out again. So pulling the leg through, we'll get it right side out, and then we need to go wrong side out. So we've got to press our crotch seam flat. We're basically going to use the same technique as we used before, except we got to use the ham this time on the inside to make it lay nice and flat. So start up here, work my way down, just putting a little bit of pressure on it like we did before. Just keep working my way around. As you get to the bottom, you're going to have to pull on those seams a little bit more to make them lay nice and flat. So I made my way down to the crotch, bottom of the crotch on that side. I'll do the same on this side, and then I'll press the end of the crotch once I've made my way back down. Or the bottom of the crotch, I should say, down there where everything intersects. You really want to kind of pull that fabric around the ham. Okay, I've got that done. Now we're down to the bottom. So I'm just going to pull it over the end of the ham here. It's already laying nice and flat. And just press everything, going all four directions, and that will make it lay nice and flat. So now that we've done that, turn them right side out again, and this time we'll press hard to set our seam. So I'm not going to bore you with the whole detail again, but basically we're just doing the same thing we did on the other seams. So kind of lay it down, get it good and flat, and press it from the outside, and just work your way all the way around. And then after I finish this, we're going to sew the waistband on next. So we'll move on to that. Anyway, work your way all the way around, press these nice and flat, and then we'll move on to the waistband. Okay, now I've used wonder clips to put the waistband on the right side, and I've put serged one side of the waistband. So the other thing I can suggest on your waistbands like this is go ahead and cut them a little bit larger, and then you can clip them on or pin them on, whatever you need to do, and bring it around and then trim it and then sew the end together for the back seam. So oftentimes the fleece will stretch a bit, and since you're going to be putting elastic in it, it's not that critical that it, if it stretches a little bit. So just be safe. I've learned that through experience over the years. And let me find the back seam. So we're going to start on the back seam. We're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam all the way around. Then we're going to press it over, and we're going to turn it. And we'll sew in the ditch to attach it on the other side, leave a little bit of an opening, and then we're going to feed our elastic through it. And I'll show you how I join elastic together after that. Okay, here we go. And this is our back seam here. So everything is lined up where it needs to be. Move that back a little bit. And here we go. My waistband is cut 2 1/4 inches. I'm going to put 1 inch elastic on it, so just so you know the size. And the reason I've got so many wonder clips on here is because I had to ease it in a bit. It keeps everything lined up for me nicely as I sew it on. Kind of stretching here to ease it in. Pull that a little bit more and ease it a little bit more. Okay, I've got some more easing to do right here around the pocket. Found these wonder clips a lot easier to deal with than pins. They're easier to take out, and they don't distort the fabric. So if you don't have them, I highly suggest them. So let me pull the pants up there. I saw the waistband kind of peeking out a little bit. I want to keep this perfectly aligned. because when you turn it over and start stitching it, it makes all the difference in the world if everything's nice and even. Okay, we're coming around toward the front seam. Pull that up a little bit, fasten it down. Okay, here we go, toward the pocket. Get my pocket nice and flat. And we're just about around. Make sure everything stays nice and flat here. As soon as I see it going up, and we're just about there. Okay, I'm having to ease a little bit more in, so I'm pulling on it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take these two out because I need to ease that in nicely now. Back where I started. Okay. And I've got that taken care of. The next thing we're going to do is got our center marked here in the front, and we're going to put a pull string in. So you have to decide if you want it on the inside or the outside. And so I need to show you how to make a pull string. I'm going to make it out of the self fabric, but you can use twill tape or just about anything that will work as a pull string for you, but I like using the self fabric, and I'll show you how I go about doing that next. So let's get started on that. Okay, now that we have our waistband on, we need to press the seams all the way around. So what I do first is this is the right side, this is the wrong side. I put it on the hem and I pull this way, open the seam up nicely, and then press it from this side first, just like we've done on the other stuff. The only difference is on this one I can press it just a little bit more, because the hem actually helps hold the fabric apart. So we're just going to continue to go all the way around, anchor everything down. I pre-pressed this before I started the camera. So what you'll do then is turn it over on this side, so you'll have the right side, and press it from this side. So just work your way around. And if you don't have a ham, do the best you can on your ironing board. But these aren't very expensive. And this is from a lady called Stitch Nerd. So if you look her up, she makes several different sizes. I've got this one, and I've got a big one, and I've got this one. So Both of these are from her, and she makes several different sizes, so I like the two different sizes. This one has a sharper point on it for smaller things, and this one's just more round. So anyway, you can look her up. She's on Etsy, if I remember correctly. Okay, there's my pocket right there. Okay, just work your way all the way around, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next part. I'm going to cut the band out that's going to go inside once we get the elastic in. We're going to need to put a buttonhole in, so I'm going to put the tie string on the inside, so I'll be doing the buttonhole on this portion of it. So what we're going to end up doing on the waistband next, I'll go ahead and show you this. You're going to fold over. It doesn't take very much. I just know it by eye. See if I can get a measurement here. I don't even know if it's 1/4 of an inch, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's about 1/4 of an inch over. So if you need to measure, I just know to fold it because our elastic is 1 inch. So it's going to go, there's the stitch line that we're going to, when we turn it over and stitch in the ditch. So when we do that, we want to be able to catch this folded edge when we stitch in the ditch, and that will close the waistband up. So we're going to have 1 inch elastic, which is that right there, and we'll fold it over and then under, a 1/4 of an inch, and that will allow it to catch, and we'll have enough room at that point to put our elastic through, slide it through, and then we'll have a finished waistband. This side will be clean. So that's the concept of what we're going to do. So anyway, at this point you can go ahead and press, move him out of the way, go ahead and press down this little folded over. That's why I didn't serge this edge. It's going to be sealed up. So just work your way around, all the way around your waistband, folding that over, pressing it. And then we'll be ready to go. Once we get our drawstring created, we'll sew the other side on there, and I'm going to show you how to create the self fabric drawstring next. So okay, I'll work my way all the way around that. Next up, I'm going to show you, I'm going to cut, I think it's roughly, if I remember right, it's going to be 4 folds, so about 1 inch wide and something long enough to go around the waist and pull out and tie. So you want to measure your waist and add about 12 inches to it, and the idea is to make it too long, so if you want to add 18 inches to it. And once you string it through, then you can tie it up, figure out, you know, the bow size that you want when you tie it in the bow knot, and then if you've got too much hanging off, you can clip it. And then we're going to tie either a knot in the end. Usually I tuck them under and sew them to seal them up, but then tie a knot in it. You need enough room to do all that, so make it a good 18 inches longer than what your waist is. That should give you enough. But I'm going to go ahead and cut it and show you how. I probably use a bias tape maker. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I may go without it and show you doing it with it and without it. That way if you have it, we can work through both scenarios. So we'll do that next. Okay, we're going to make our pull string now. So I've cut the fabric about 1/8 of an inch less than the 1.5 inches that this tape binder requires. This is going to end up with a finished size of 1/2 inch, and then we're going to fold it again, which will be 1/4 of an inch in the end once we fold it. But anyway, it says to cut 1.5 inch width out. Well, if you're doing quilting or something, that'll work, but with fleece or flannel or anything like that. It's going to be thicker, so you're going to have to adjust it smaller. And so usually I think about 1/8 of an inch should be enough to help us out here. So we're about to find out. So here we go. On the ends here, you need to cut a triangle. So fold it in half, cut it this way. That'll give you a triangle to feed it through the tape binder. So I'm just going to feed it through and see if I can get it started. And I just use a seam ripper to get under here and pull it through. And that seems to be going through fairly well. See, it's folding in the center okay. This thick stuff, it's always harder to pull through because it's so thick. So what I'm going to do, I've got a couple of weights here. These are pattern weights, and once I get going, I'm going to take this one and put it down on that end so that I can kind of stretch it and keep it straight. So I'll put this one down here, and once I get going with this one, I'll put this weight on this side to keep it anchored down. So some people put a pin in, I just put weights on it. So as it comes out, we're going to keep our iron right on the edge of it. Yeah, when I keep tension on it, it folds really nicely. I want to keep it as small as I can because it's so thick, and I can see it coming apart right here, and I don't want that. So I'm going to correct it right now. This first part is the hardest part to get going because it works best when you have weight holding everything down. Yeah, that's separating out too much. Okay, I tell you what. And this isn't even this thick, so on something even thicker it's going to be just about impossible to do. So I'm going to do it the manual way. So let me show you that. Take it, fold it in half, get a center line crease all the way down. I'll just do this first part here in camera view because this is, I cut one about 70 inches long. And the idea again is to get it too long, get it through, tie it, and then cut it to the length you need. It's better to be way too long than too short. So we've got that iron to the center crease, and then we're going to take each side and fold it in. We're going to do what the bias tape binder was doing manually. And it's good to keep it even because you're going to fold it over again, and if you have one side further than the other, it's going to get kind of wonky on you. So I just fold it together like this, keep my iron close by, hit it with a little bit of steam, and you got to be careful, you'll burn your hand. And just take your time and go all the way down it. Okay, once you've got it halved, then we're going to fold it over again. It's hot. See if I can cool it down a little bit. Okay. Then we're going to take it and roll it over again. And just iron it down. You'll have to press and give this a lot of steam when you're doing this. Hold it in place. And then to make it, what I do is I do 2 rows of stitches. I'll come down stitch this side closed first, down through here, and then I do an equal stitch over here on this side, and I stay right at the edge, basically on this one especially. The other one you can cheat a little bit and come in a little bit more, but the idea is to have two parallel stitches holding it together. So I'll show you that on the sewing machine, but let me get this finished up all the way down using this technique I just showed you, and then I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. Okay, we've got our strap here now, so it's been pressed over. So again, we fold it in half and then folded the two side seam or sides into the fold line, and then we press it over. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew on the open end, and we're going to stay right on the edge as we do it. Stitch length is going to be 3, and I'm going to stretch this as I sew it. I don't need it stretching once we get it in the band, so I'll stretch it out a little bit, keep it good and tight, and I'm just sewing with the edge of this right on the inside of the right side of the foot, just trying to catch the edge of it so you'll see it as it comes out on the other side. Try to go slow here, keep it under control. And I kind of use my fingers as my fence to guide it consistently. So this will twist on you, so try to get it straight as you can. And then, here we go. Okay, you can see kind of where my stitch is there. I feel it kind of opening up in my hand. That means it's twisting, so I'm going to come back and straighten it out again, because you'll notice it'll twist on you. Okay, here we go. Feel it twisting again. And I just ran out of bobbin thread. Looks like. No, I didn't. Thought I did. Different sound. Yes, I did. I knew something was up. You can tell by the sound of it. Just didn't look far enough ahead. Okay, let me put a new bobbin in. So what I'm going to do, you've seen what I'm doing here. I'm going to go all the way down to the end, and then I'm going to flip it over and do it on this side. So I'll have parallel stitches, and it'll kind of keep it from twisting the way it is right now. It'll kind of even it out. So let me take care of that, and then I'll show you the finished product, and we'll go through, and we're going to have to sew our waistband over and leave a little opening for this. And but before we do that, we're going to do the buttonholes on the waistband so that we can feed this through. So I'll show you the end result when I finish this, and then we'll move over to doing our buttonhole after that. Okay, I've got it finished now. We've sewed along the edge here and along the edge here. So now that I've sewed both sides, it's not twisting the way it was before, so that kind of flattens it out. So anyway, again, this is much longer than what I need, and the idea is once we feed it through, we'll tie the knot in the end of it, and then cut it off at the knot, whatever's extra and left over, so that way we know we'll have plenty once we go through all this trouble. I'm going to go ahead and press it, steam press it real quick, set the stitches in it nicely, and then we'll do our buttonholes next. Okay, it's time to do our buttonhole, and what I've done here is I've put some interfacing. By the way, I've decided to put these on the front because the strap's a little bit thicker than what I want on the inside. So this is my center front, and I've marked a starting point about 1 inch apart here, so I want a 1/2 inch on each side. Turn this over, you can see it. Anyway, 1/2 inch on each side of the front seam is what I've done. And I've got my interfacing on there. That's about 3 inches, 2.5 inches or so of interfacing, just so it covers where the buttonholes are going to be. And it's a very soft, pliable fashion interfacing. So I did some tests here. Take your strap over to your machine and some scrap fabric, and I did 3 buttonholes, kind of found the size that I wanted. It's in between a small one here and a big one, but what you want to do is do your test and then take, let me find the end of my cord here, take your cord, feed it through it, make sure that as it's coming around you can get it through there. And that one was a little bit too big, and then the other one that I did here was a little bit too small. There was too much stress on the fabric, so I'm going somewhere in between these two. And I've marked my fabric where I'm going to start, and when I measured where I'm going to start, it starts at the top. There's my top mark, and then it goes down and then back up. So I'm going to start just beyond my cross mark there. So okay, I sped this up. It's kind of boring. Basically what I'm doing is repositioning the fabric, trying to get it under the foot and align everything up. So once we get that started, make sure that you do a test to see if your buttonhole is sewed from the top to the bottom or bottom to the top, and then adjust your fabric accordingly. And I think that looks good. Okay, here we go. Yeah, it kind of went off my interfacing a little bit. I should have put it a little bit lower, so I'm going to put another piece on to cover the other side, but you can see there where it missed it a little bit. There's my buttonhole right there, so it looks good. What I'm going to do is do the next one same way, and I'm going to go put a little bit more interfacing a little bit lower on here so it'll catch it this time. Make sure it catches all the way down. So yeah, kind of lesson learned there. When you put yours on there, go ahead and make it a little bit taller so it covers the whole area. I just did a fold over and just kind of winged it when I put it in there, but anyway, it will help if it covers all of it. Okay, that's the buttonhole, and again, this is going to be on the front, so fold it over the way it's going to be folded when it's sewn, and then you can kind of mark your starting points. I put these an inch apart is what I did, so I measured a 1/2 inch from the center seam line over. That'll give me a good place and give me enough room to just cinch it up and pull it up. So do that, and after we get our buttonhole in, then we're going to sew our waistband closed, leave a little opening so we can pull the elastic through. Okay, we've got our buttonholes created here, and I've got this little buttonhole cutter that I highly recommend if you can find them. Get them at your local sewing supply, but it just makes opening the buttons real easy. If you don't have one of these, fold your fabric over, cut it with your scissors, cut it out. You can find all kinds of videos online on how to cut buttonholes out, but this is how I do it. Put my little plate down. And this is a little bit wider than my buttonhole is, so I've got to be very careful that I don't cut my threads. Yeah, I think I'm just going to cut it out with the scissors. When you get them a little bit smaller, this thing can be very dangerous. So I'm just going to cut the edges with it. Like that. Give myself a start. And then we'll do it the old-fashioned way. That side, turn it around now and get this side, and voila, one buttonhole. Get this one now. There we go. And you can see on this other one I just ironed interfacing over it, and it'll stabilize it. So just go on the back now and trim the threads away. You have to be careful when you do this. Stabilizer helps this from fraying also. But we'll just give it a little haircut, kind of clean it up a bit. There we go. So now when we feed our strap around, we can come through there, and that's where it will tie off. So there's our buttonholes, and now I'm going to fold the waistband over, and like I told you before, I've gone through and rolled over the edge about 1/4 inch, and now I'm just going to take it, lay it just right beyond the seam line where we put our waistband on. Use that as my guide so that it catches it, and then I'm going to flatten that out. One of the things that I will probably do, I'm not going to show it on the camera, but I'm going to go ahead and use some wash away tape and put it in Okay, one of the things I've decided to do, and this is probably a better solution than putting the sticky tape around it, let's just do a basting stitch. And that allows us to do it from the inside, and you want to stay roughly about a 1/2 inch from the bottom edge, maybe just a tad more, but this will anchor everything down so that when you're sewing on the other side you don't have to worry about it moving. This is my brother PQ 1500S, and it's got a very long basting stitch, so I can go to a length of 7. Your machine may only go to 4.5 or 5 depending on what you've got. The key is loosen your tension up, get it nice and loose. That'll make it easy to remove. And so the bottom tension, I've got it cranked way down. I'll just do a few stitches here to see that it looks good. I just want to make sure it's going to be easy to remove. I'm going to loosen it up just a little bit more. Okay, here we go. We can do this fairly quickly. And what I'm doing is I'm just keeping the band pulled just slightly to keep it nice and tight where it stays flat. So we get everything straightened out here. You want to try to keep everything flat when you're doing this because it's going to anchor it down kind of the way it's going to look in the end. And you can see how loose my tension is. I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit, but it's going to do the job for us. This also gives you a chance to check. When I pressed it over, I've got a spot here that if it would gone with the pressing edge, it would have missed. So it's kind of a trial run to kind of see what you got. Okay, that should catch now. I'll probably come back and hit that a little bit closer since that one is trying to move up on me. So, okay, here we go. Turn it around, get everything flattened out. Pockets are so long they're getting in the way. Okay, there we go. It's nice and flat now. Okay, I'm just going to continue to sew around and finish up the basting stitches, and then we'll move on and sew the waistband on. Okay, we've got our waistband basted on now. So you see how loose everything is to make it really easy to get out, but it does the job of actually holding everything down. So okay, I've got 2 pins placed in back towards the back to mark my opening to put my elastic through. So I'll start stitching in the ditch on this side of the pin, leaving a little bit of space. So we're going to try to sew right in that seam where it's attached. The waistband is attached. Let me see if I can get everything kind of unwound here leg-wise. Make sure everything's out of the way. going to just a little bit under 3 for my stitch length, and again I'm going to try to stay right in that ditch. And I'll just leave long thread tails to tie my knots in the back instead of back stitching. Okay, I'm going to slow my machine way down here so I can go nice and easy. This is about precision, not speed, so take your time. Slowed it down so much it doesn't want to go. There's a sweet spot on these industrial machines. Okay, I'm going to fast forward until I get to the end, but basically I'm going to sew all the way around to this right here, again leaving a long tail and just tying it off on the end, and then we're going to turn it over, put our elastic through our little opening there. So instead of boring you with this slow process, just again take your time. You want your needle to hit just to the left. You may be able to see my thread right there, just to the left of that band. I mean, just right next to it. So that's what you want to do. Just do that all the way around, and what you'll see is it's attaching our waistband right there. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, I've made it to the end. So I'm going to turn over here and have a look at what we've got. Okay. There's our stitch locking down our waistband as it goes all the way around, and I need to tie off my threads here. So let me pull them through. Okay, there's the first one, and do the second one here. And there's the second one. Okay, now all we need to do is remove our basting stitch. So you can see how loose that side is, so all I do is go around with a seam ripper and rip up a few spots around it, and you'll see that how easy it is to remove it. So take it on the back side, remove these, and out it comes. So again, just make it loose, really loose. It'll make it really easy to remove. And I guess it'd help if I cut this side. There we go. Okay, well, you get the idea. So if it's nice and loose, it's very easy to remove. You can remove very long strands of it, and let me remove all of mine, and then we're going to insert the elastic. So we'll do that next. Stand by. Okay. Here's my elastic. It's 1-inch elastic, and what I've done is I've sewn a little seam right here across the end, and I use this little crochet stick to insert the elastic. So we need to find our opening. That's where the pins are, so it's right there, so I can remove the pins now. Done their job. Okay. So there's her opening. And here we go. A place that can get a little tricky is at the seams. Kind of work your way around those. And I'm hitting in between . Keep having to back off. Remove the elastic from the stick and make my way through so I can find the opening here. There it is. Kind of work the stick around, open it up good, and then go back and grab the elastic and then make my way through. That elastic right there with the fold gets kind of thick, so it can be a little bit hard. There we go. Okay, now the stick is all the way in, so we'll just work our way around now. Okay, now we gotta go around the pocket on this one. Just slowly work your way around everything. And it's a fairly tight fit, and the reason I like that, I don't have to worry about the elastic rolling in the encasing when the fit is tight. So it takes a little bit longer to feed it through because it's tight, but the end result is worth it. Get around the pocket. Some more elastic in there. There we go. around the front where our belt loops are. We're over halfway home now. And I always cut the elastic a little bit bigger than what I need. That way I've got enough to pull it in and, you know, make sure everything fits just right. I like my elastic a little bit tighter than a lot of people do. And I use a knit elastic, so it's a little bit softer and more giving anyway, so you make it a little bit tighter. Okay, there we are. Tight fit for that end. Okay, I'll kind of distribute this out a little bit more evenly here. Okay. Alright, so it's in. So now all we need to do is we need to sew our elastic together here on the end. And I'm not going to show that in this video. I have a video that you'll find online showing how I join elastic together. So go ahead and go find that, and it'll show you a close-up of how I do it. There's no sense in recreating it since I'm going to do the exact same thing that I show in the video. So what I do, just give you a summary of those, I'll cut this to the length that I need, and I'll probably cut it about right there. Pull a little bit more out. I'll butt the ends up together that are smooth, and then I'll zigzag these two pieces together. They don't overlap. It gives you a good clean join when you do that. So take a look at that video and it'll show you how I'm going to do this. So that's it for now. After I do that, I'm just going to stitch in the ditch right here to finish closing it up. I'm not going to show that, as I've already showed you how to do that, but we just need to close this little area up. So stitch in the ditch on the front, and then we'll put in our pull string after that. So see you then. Okay, got our waistband all closed up now, got our elastic in, everything looks good. Waistband sewed down nicely. So now we're going to put our pull string in. So what I've done is put a safety pin in, and I kind of cut this at an angle to give it a little bit better chance of feeding through without any resistance. So I'm going to take it, put it through the buttonhole, and let's see, I'm going to go the other way. It's easier for me to go this way. We don't want it to twist, so I'm going to make sure that it is staying at yeah, that's that way. So go all the way down, make sure everything stays flat as I'm feeding it in, and this should go fairly quickly. It's not near as tight as the elastic was in the fitting. Make sure it's still good and flat and not twisting in any way. At one seam. Kind of tough making my way. There it goes. Should have pressed it before I did this to flatten everything out again nicely, but I had 2 rows of basting stitch in, and off camera it took maybe 2 minutes to get it all out, so that's well worth the time that it takes. Okay, everything looks good down there. Anyway, it's well worth the time. I kind of found that anytime I take the time to baste, it's always well worth it in the end. Okay, I'm just about there. And here's my buttonhole, and there it comes. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'll put the pants on and pull this through a lot further. Let me do that right now. Okay, I know it's going to be too long. It's probably, let me see here, see if I can even it out a little bit more. Okay, that's about how long it is. And so what you're going to do is you're going to try them on, cinch them where they're comfortable, and tie yourself a bow like so, whatever size you're comfortable with. And you see how long that is. I mean, I'm not going to have to cut too much off of it, so it just shows you just need to make the pull string a lot longer than what you would really think it needs to be. And then once I do that, I'll cut this off, and then I will take this and I will sew a couple of stitches over it to seal it off, and then I'll tie a knot in it, and that will be finished. So next thing I'm going to show you is we're going to hem the pants, but I'm going to try those on and make sure the length with the shoes that I wear these with, and it's just house shoes usually, so I'll just verify that the length is good, and then we'll do a double roll. I cut these to where I can do a 1-inch double roll hem, so I'll turn it up about 2 inches, and then I'll turn it up again, and then we'll hem it. So I'll show you that next. Okay, we're down to the final piece here, which is hemming the pants. So I've got a double fold hem here. I'm going to loosen my tension just a little bit for the outside because I'm going to sew from the inside out. And we're going to use a stitch length of 3, just a tad over 3. Okay, you want to start on the inside pant seam, so that's this one. lined up right on the edge. Let them bury the needle. Do a back stitch or two. Okay. Got the camera at that angle. Hopefully you can see what's going on here, but we're just going to stay right on the edge, as close to the edge as we can. Kind of just keeping the pant bag pulled tight, not overly stretching it, but just trying to keep it tight. Okay, we're coming up on where we started, and we're going to sew over those stitches and then back stitch a couple. Don't need to go overboard in back stitching. A couple will do it. Okay, I've hit the stitches that I started with, and that is it. That's all it takes. I've already hemmed the other side, so just showing you on the one. Show you the results here. Nice clean hem. The inside's tacked down all the way to the edge nicely, so it won't flop around. So that's why I do it from the inside, that way I can follow it around perfectly. I just loosen the tension just a little bit on the needle, and it gives you a little bit better looking quote top stitch effect on the other side. Okay, that's it. We are done. So I hope you've enjoyed the sew along. If you have any questions at all that I can answer, please feel free to ask. I'll be happy to elaborate, and sometimes I even do a video response showing a technique. So again, thanks for following along, and if I can help you with anything, let me know. Otherwise, guys, take care.